Slavery, one of the most atrocious practices in human history, did not stay in the past. Despite advances in human rights, its echoes still resonate today. It is estimated that more than 40 million people live in conditions analogous to slavery today. Labor exploitation, domestic servitude, and human trafficking are just a few facets of this reality. In the 21st century, millions of people around the world continue to be victims of modern forms of slavery, such as human trafficking, forced labor, and sexual exploitation. And almost 80% of the world's population lives in conditions of economic servitude in the form of loans or debts. In addition, even today, half of the planet does not own their own home, and therefore is also subject to the whims and humiliations of landlords. But looking at the numbers, we can say that the most subtle form of slavery lies in the control of access to land. All over the world, a handful of individuals appropriate the labor of many simply by controlling the land. This terrible reality creates a cycle of dependence and exploitation, perpetuating poverty and inequality. By denying access to land due to its high cost, dignity and autonomy are denied to all its inhabitants. Exorbitant rents and unaffordable land prices make people prisoners of a system that enslaves them in a subtle yet effective way. So effective that the purchase of land has become a transaction that many consider normal. But is it really fair and natural to pay for a resource that should be free and accessible to all? Would it be fair to pay to breathe? Would it be fair to pay to look at the stars? Why should we pay for a natural resource like land? However, we pay. The reality is that the monopoly of land creates an economic hierarchy that subjugates the individual. Buying a piece of land can mean dedicating a lifetime of work to a single goal, having a place to live, or rather, regaining through money the right to a piece of land. This system perpetuates inequality and limits the opportunities of those who cannot afford this luxury. The world is so mentally confused that it can debate the price of meat or the price of a bus ticket, etc. But people do not discuss the price of land, silently accepting without question that this is an inevitable cost. But what if we started to question this norm? What if we came together to claim access to land as a fundamental human right? A small group holds in its hands 80% of the land, and they do not use it, while millions of people are looking for a place to live. These lands, which could be cultivated or used to build houses, open businesses, are now empty, purposeless, while cities are saturated with people living on the streets. This absurd discrepancy, this unjust accumulation of wealth, is at the root of a new form of slavery. The gap between rich and poor is widening every day, creating a system where few have everything without working, and millions have nothing. The landowners, protected by archaic laws and by a culture where there is no penalty, because no idle land pays taxes. This is the reality. The landowners keep huge tracts of land without paying taxes. These laws, which once aimed to protect private property, now only serve to perpetuate inequality. It is a cruel reality. Ordinary people need to work for decades to buy a simple piece of land. Often, this effort consumes their lives, leaving them with no time or resources for other basic needs. This distorted reality, this system that only benefits the rich at the expense of the majority, needs to change. The struggle for access to land is a struggle for justice, for a future where everyone has the opportunity to prosper. It is time to come together and demand real and lasting change. This modern slavery has no visible chains, but rather impossible debts to pay. Construction and agricultural workers are trapped in an endless cycle of hard work and sacrifice. Their faces reflect the fatigue and resignation of a daily struggle that seems to have no end. And the promise of one day owning their own land, a promise that never materializes. The hope of owning a piece of land fades with each new sale or rental ad. Debts accumulate, and despair becomes a constant in their lives. The workers, trapped in this infernal cycle of work and debt, see their wages go straight into the hands of the landowners with no hope of liberation. Each note delivered is a reminder of their precarious situation, and each working day is a struggle for survival. Land prices, inflated by real estate speculation and lack of control, become inaccessible to most. Real estate speculation creates an insurmountable barrier for those who dream of owning their own home. The empty lots, the abandoned subdivisions, with their for sale signs, become symbols of an unfulfilled promise. Families are forced to live in deplorable conditions, crammed into unhealthy housing, while land remains empty, awaiting appreciation. Children play in poor neighborhoods, oblivious to everything, unaware that their future is conditioned by the injustice of a system that favors profit over human well-being. This blatant injustice, these alarming numbers, these evident ills, this denial of the fundamental right to a piece of land, this monstrous denial of decent housing, all of this cannot continue. The demonstrations for housing are a cry of hope and determination. Families, despite everything, look to the future with the hope that one day justice will be done and they can live in a decent home. 20 years? 30? A lifetime of hard work to be able to say that you have a small piece of land? This is the reality for millions of Brazilians. Trapped in a system that exploits them, that keeps them in modern slavery, they sacrifice their youth, their present, and their future for the illusion of being owners. Owners of a natural resource, like air, water, or sunlight. It's totally absurd. The land, instead of being a common good, something that benefits everyone, has become a tool of servitude and oppression, a tool that perpetuates inequality and condemns generations to poverty. This unsustainable reality, this offense to human dignity, needs to end. We need to shout, enough! The current system of land ownership is an illusion, a mask that only benefits a handful of individuals at the expense of the majority. The landowners, protected by unfair laws and corrupt politicians, accumulate wealth without contributing to the well-being of all. Meanwhile, schools are falling apart, hospitals face a lack of resources, and essential services deteriorate. Unproductive lands, instead of generating income for the state, end up becoming an obstacle to social development. This failed system, this distortion of the common good, needs to be questioned. It's like shooting yourself in the foot, the working class, unable to have decent housing. In short, the monopoly of land has become a subtle form of modern slavery. Coupled with the lack of tax on idle land, it perpetuates the economic and housing crisis. The fact that they do not tax these lands encourages owners, speculators, and landlords to keep them unused. This situation not only affects those seeking housing, but also contributes to social inequality. This concentration of land in the hands of a few creates a monopoly that plagues the population. While half the world has nowhere to live, owners of idle land profit from real estate speculation and artificial appreciation, leaving many people with no choice. Now that we know all this, the solution is simple. We need to tax these idle lands as if they were built on, and there are millions of vacant lots. This tax would encourage owners to give their land a purpose, increasing the supply of real estate and, consequently, lowering prices, perhaps even the value of the tax itself. A tax on idle land would not only generate enormous revenue for the government, to the point of being able to eliminate other taxes that harm the population, but would also encourage the efficient use of urban space. In addition to generating enormous revenue for the government, this would also give everyone the same chance to have a decent roof over their heads. Families could move into decent and affordable housing. By abolishing real estate speculation and making land more accessible, we would be encouraging the construction of housing for all. This would help millions of people achieve the dream of homeownership, providing long-term stability and security. Imagine a society where the dream of homeownership is not a mirage, but a reality for all. A place where every family can prosper freely. Imagine a world where everyone, regardless of their background or social class, has the opportunity to have the key to their own home. A society where children grow up in safe homes and communities flourish. A society where families can build a better future, with the peace of mind of knowing they have a place to call their own, free from rent and exploitation. A society where debts are not a perpetual burden. This is the promise of fair tax reform, a promise of equality, justice, and opportunity for all. The impact of liberation, a more just and equal society. The benefits of taxing the intrinsic value of land, where vacant lots would be taxed as if they had buildings and unused land would be taxed based on its production capacity. Go far beyond housing. This means jobs, it means production, and for the state it means more revenue without relying on international loans. By implementing a single land value tax, we could create a more stable, predictable, and fixed source of revenue for the state. This would fund essential public services such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Establishing such a system could mark the beginning of a new era of prosperity. Easing the tax burden on labor, savings, trade, and production would encourage investment and entrepreneurship. People would be more motivated to innovate and create, leading to sustainable economic growth and job creation. Having more financial resources would allow the state to improve the lives of all. At the same time, freeing up land from speculation would boost the economy, creating millions of jobs and generating opportunities for sustainable growth. This is the promise of a fairer, more equitable and prosperous future for all. Breaking the chains. The power of collective action. Changing an unjust and enslaving system cannot be done alone. It requires the joint action of those who refuse to accept the status quo. It is time for the people to rise up, make their voices heard, and demand real change. The fight against land monopolization is a fight for dignity, for equality, and for the future. It is a fight that concerns us all, regardless of our social or economic position. Together, we can break the chains of modern slavery and build a better world for ourselves and for future generations. A bright future. Imagine a world without modern slavery. Imagine a world where land, instead of being a tool of oppression, becomes an engine of social progress. A world where everyone has access to decent housing, where speculation is a thing of the past, and where wealth is distributed fairly. This future is not an unattainable dream, but a reality within our reach if we have the courage to fight for it. History has taught us, social change only happens when people come together and claim their rights. The time for indifference is over. Let's open our eyes to reality. Modern slavery is not a distant problem. It is a reality that affects millions of people around the world, and we can no longer ignore it. It is time to step out of our bubble and recognize the urgency of the situation. The future of our society, the possibility of a more just world, depends on our willingness to act. Let's not be complicit in this injustice. Rise up, make yourselves heard, and fight for a future where land is a right, not a privilege. Land should not be a symbol of slavery, but a space for freedom and growth. It is time to rethink our relationship with this vital resource and fight for fair access for all. Together, we can transform the way we see and value land.